Dead Hands. Brett.
Yeah, I'm Brett Cross. I lost my son in the May 24th, 2022 Robb Elementary massacre. My son Uzziah is the reason that we continue to speak up on gun violence here in America, and is one of the reasons why we do the show, so that he is not just a statistic. So many times you see that the victims aren't remembered, but the perpetrators are. So when we started, it was because we wanted people to remember who he was, not that he was gun violence victim, whatever the number was in 2022, that he was Uzziah, that he was the amazing, just passionate, loyal, funny kid that he was. So we will continue to do so.
All right. Tonight we have a special guest co-host, Walt. If you'll introduce yourself.
Yes. My name is Walt. I go by Walt Real on TikTok, YouTube, and Walt Real Art on Instagram. I am an artist and I am an activist. I've lost family and friends due to gun violence. So this topic is very important to me and very serious. And I am very honored to be with Ben and Brett in this conversation.
And our guest for tonight is Elizabeth Booker Houston. Liz, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hey, so yeah, I'm Elizabeth Booker Houston. Go by Liz. I am a lawyer and a comedian, and I do a lot of political commentary, and gun violence prevention is at the heart of what I do, because my little brother Jonathan Booker was murdered on December 3rd, 2017 in Memphis, Tennessee at 25 years old in a mass shooting where he was the only victim who did not survive. And he was just an innocent bystander walking to his car. And there, as I'm sure we'll talk about later, were a lot of huge things that happened that led up to his murder and could have been prevented through better gun legislation and better handling of gun violence. So that's what I do. I try to make politics, even the dark stuff, funny and entertaining, and also accessible to people in a digestible way, because it's very complicated, very quick. So that's definitely my brand, is I try to make it fun. I call it The Daily Show with a lot more F-bombs.
Yeah, I mean, and that's our radio show, right? And Brett and I are very much about the dark humor. That's how we cope. Love, laugh, toaster bath. I mean, that's kind of our motto. So, but let's start with just talking about who your brother was. Who was he?
Yeah, so John, Jonathan Charles Booker, call him John. Liz and John, that's who we are. I'm only 2.5 years older than John. I was born in 90, he was born in 92, and we were born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee. And like a lot of younger siblings, we fought a lot. When he was born, I was actually very mad about it. Because I was still a toddler, I was like, hey, what's going on here? And I was the fourth kid. My brother was the fifth, so he was the youngest, only boy. So it was 4 girls. Then he came along, and I used to walk on him when he would do tummy time on the floor. I'd step on him on purpose, but he would just giggle because I weighed like nothing, and he was like a huge chunk of a baby. Like he was like 2 weeks late, so he was just huge. And he would just giggle about it, but I did it because I hated him. Yeah, we had a very close bond, just being 2 siblings close together. Also, we come from a blended family, and we were the only 2, the 2 of us, like he's the only sibling who I had the same mom, same dad. So black sister, 2 white sisters, and then we were the mixed ones. So kind of that identity tying us together too. And yeah, he just was a cool kid. He played like 3 instruments by ear. He couldn't read music, but he played jazz bass, guitar, and he could play drums by ear. Was a skateboarder and ended up being semi-professional, actually. I remember he skated with Rob Dyrdek once when we lived in Richmond. We moved there when I was a senior in high school. And when he was in his late teens, started to have a lot of trouble with his spine. I have pretty mild scoliosis with a small curvature at the bottom, and we both just kind of shot up real fast, and that can happen a lot of times with like really crazy growth spurts. Like maybe your spine scoliosis, I guess, can result from that too. But his was like an S, and it was like crushing in on him, and it was crushing in on his esophagus, so he would choke like all the time. So we had to he couldn't eat when no one was home, because a lot of times we'd have to Heimlich or like hit his back if he started choking. It was like horrible. And so finally when he was 19, he had a spinal fusion surgery where they put the rod in to straighten out his spine. I remember when he stood up like crazy tall. He was already tall. He was like already 6 feet. And then he grew like a few inches from the surgery, and he stood up. It just was like, whoa. And he couldn't, really skateboard or move the same anymore. Couldn't even bend over to like tie his shoes. He has this rod in his spine, so like forever he wouldn't be able to just like bend and move normally. So he got super into videography and photography. So a lot of skateboard photography and videography, and ended up being a videographer and a photographer. He was hired all over Memphis. Skateboarders, car show guys. My brother became super into cars, customizing cars and like racing cars. I know he had a Lexus, and the last car he had was like this tiny little 2-seater BMW convertible that he went and picked up. Told me about how he drove to Nashville and got it. And he was able to skateboard again, not at the same level he was at. I think he definitely could have been a professional skateboarder if it weren't for the super severe scoliosis and the spinal fusion. I think he could have gotten to that level, but it's crazy to see the videos of him skateboarding and how well he still did, even with the freaking rod in his spine. So, just really cool dude. Nicest person ever. Didn't know an enemy, didn't know a stranger. Tons of friends. Very popular. Great uncle. We have 6 nieces. Well, I say we. He's got a nephew who he has not met in this world since I had my son after John passed away. But at the time that he passed, we had 6 nieces and nephews. He was super close to my nephew, Brandon, who was my oldest nephew. Since we're kind of a young aunt and uncle, like he was 5 and I was 7 when we became an aunt and uncle, because there's like 12 years between me and my oldest sister. So, and just really sweet kid, goofy, just joking all the time. And just like I said, he just always, wherever he went, he made friends. So a little different from me, since I'm a little bit of a confrontational person. I always say my brother's we definitely have a lot of things in common. But yeah, I'm definitely the more polarizing confrontational one, and he was very much like easygoing and could make friends wherever he went. So
That's awesome. So talk a little bit more, like, so you grew up your early childhood in Memphis?
yeah, the whole time. So I was 17 when we moved to Richmond.
Okay.
And that was for my dad's job. John was 14 at the time, about to turn 15. And I moved right back to Memphis for college. I wasn't even there a year. As soon as I graduated, I was like, going back home. And then John followed right behind me. So once that happened, my parents were like, okay. So they settled back into Memphis when I was 22 and John was 20. So kind of a short time for me. John definitely spent like his high school years and a little bit after, like in Richmond, Virginia. But Memphis is definitely our home. That's what we knew. That's where we grew up. That's where all our family and friends always were. So yeah.
Which is ironic considering you're in the DC area now, which is closer to Richmond than it is to Memphis.
I just headlined in Richmond, actually, and I was like, this is such a short drive, because we used to drive from Memphis to Richmond. It was like 14 hours. So 13, 14 hours. So it was like, oh, a quick 2 hours in the car? Look at that. I'm way closer to Richmond now. So
That's awesome. So, your teenage years, once you moved to Richmond, you moved back to Memphis. He comes a couple of years later. What was that like, that reintroduction, like being in the same city kind of thing?
It's like he never really left, and that's how it was when I came back too. And then he came and lived with our oldest sister until my parents like moved back and bought their house. And like up until he passed away, he was still living at home because we're kind of, I guess, very Southern of, I don't know, not really the kind of parents who just boot you out the house when you're 18. And also it's kind of like, my dad was perfectly fine with his kids staying home till they got married. So, and then I even came back after I got married, because when I graduated law school, I had a husband. I'd been married a year, and there was like a gap between my lease being up in Memphis and us moving to DC. So like I had moved back home for like 3 months into my like old bedroom at my parents' house, which was really funny. Me and my husband and our 2 cats moving back in, but yeah. So I mean, it's just always family, like super close. And at that time, so my sister Indian, she went off to the military, so she's like moved all over the place. But Candace and Katie, who were like my 2 oldest sisters, they lived walking distance from our parents' house. So everybody was right there. And I remember my husband saying it's so weird, because like when your family gets together just on a random afternoon, it's like a freaking family reunion, because there's so many of us. Like I said, 6 nieces and nephews, plus like the partners that they bring, and like my brother, his girlfriend Courtney, his fiance at the time, he asked, but like bless her, like loved her. And then of course my husband's in the pictures. There's so many of us, and so like, yeah, with my brother coming back, it was just, I don't know, just like expected. And like I said, we have a lot in common, and people you know, people always would point that out and think we were twins actually by the time we got older, because they were like, oh, you guys twins? Like, no, we're just close in age. And yeah, but yeah, it was just really nice to have him there with us again.
Now, was he going
I don't know.
to college as well? Was he going to school there, or did he
Nah, school was not John's thing. Very much an artist, very much skateboarder artist, like getting to that. I'm the only one who went to college. Like, I'm the first one to graduate high school. Like, everybody's always kind of artsy in my family. My mom and my oldest sister were photographers. My mom and my second sister, they paint. My mom like sews and custom makes stuff. And again, none of them have any formal training in anything that they do. My cat Quincy. They just like are, I don't know, they're artists. So yeah, they just kind of always did their thing. And so he just jumped right into, like I said, photography and videography. He worked at like True Green, because my dad worked at True Green. He was like a manager or something for like at a branch. And then he worked at like Terminex and then Orkin. And then at the time when I was married, when I was in law school, we rented a house together. Me and my husband lived together. And my brother had a key. So like there'd be times I'd come out, you know, home from class, like around lunchtime. My brother's just like sleeping on my couch, like playing video games or like whatever he's doing, because he could just let himself in, and he knew he could, and just do whatever, and like it was fine. And so he would just park his like Orkin truck outside when he was on breaks, like come take a nap inside my house or something. And, yeah, and we talked on the phone every day after I moved. So when I moved to DC, like I talked to him every day on my work lunch break. We talked to each other on the phone, just, you know, check in every single day. So I definitely talked to him the day he died, because I talked to him every single day. It was very rare for me to go a day not talking to him. So, but yeah, it was just it was a lot of fun just having him around. I don't know, like I said, we fought a lot when we were little, but by the time we were teenagers, we were super close. I can't recall fighting like at all, like in my adult years with my brother, which the same cannot be said for like with my sisters, but with my little brother, you know. It was pretty cool.
And was he close to any of your other siblings, or really just with you?
Oh no, definitely. Like he and Candace were definitely very close. Like our oldest sister, I'm really close to Candace too. I think part of that is just because it's a little different, though. Like, not to put down, like, you know, our other siblings, it's a little different. Candace was almost like a parent. Because, like I said, she was 14, 15 when John was born. Like, I remember her, like, she had a license in a car. She would pick me up from kindergarten and, I don't know, take me to the doctor and stuff. And then my brother-in-law, Greg, he came in the picture when I was, like, 7. So I don't even, like, even our brother-in-law relationship isn't traditional. It really is like having another brother, because we were just so little when all that came into the picture. So it's like a little different when you have such a large age gap with your sibling. And then, like I said, John moved in with her, and he and Brandon were only like 4 years apart in age. So her oldest son and him, they were like super close in age. So it was very different.
I can relate to that. So my little sister is about 14 years younger than me as well. So she became an aunt at 3,
Mhm.
to a kid that was older than her. So yeah, I can definitely, I feel you on that one for us. Yeah, that the bonds are closer than just like normal brother and sister when you have when you're that much older. You take on a
Yeah.
different role as well to help, not necessarily parent, but like to help guide. You know.
Yes, it's totally different. So yeah, he and Candace were definitely super close, in the same way that I was to Candace, and I would say that he and our nephew Brandon are definitely very close, very close. Especially with John being the only boy, and then Brandon coming along. So
So was John the baby?
yeah, 5, the youngest of 5. Yeah.
Five.
So
I understand the family dynamic, the large family. Like Brett said, we don't have a big age gap in our family. It's 7 of us, and we're all a year apart. Besides the youngest. Yeah. So you understand a little bit.
a little bit, but
all
not
of that.
7.
Jeez, yeah. But John was the youngest, and where do you fall in line in the sibling count?
I'm the 4th, so right before him, but it's a little different even from like maybe your family, because like my sister Indian, like, lived with her mom, so like she wasn't in the house growing up. And then Candace, I mean, she was in the house for that much time because she moved out and then was living with Greg, and then they got married and they had kids. She was 19 when my niece came along, I remember. Like, so it was never like on a day-to-day necessarily like a bunch of little kids close in age, because then Katie was right behind Candace, like moving out. Like, it was very quick succession. But it's just like I said, like even their houses were just walking distance from our parents, so like everybody was just together all the time. So I guess not the same kind of sibling bickering that you might find when you have like a group that's close in age and all living in the same house. There's definitely like a whole different dynamic. Like Brett said, when you have that age gap, it's just kind of, like you said, not really parenting, but like guiding and leading more so than just like, regular sibling relationship. But I love it though. I always tell people that, like when I hear people say, my kids are going to be far apart in age, what am I going to do? I'm like, we had a great time.
So
Yeah, I envy you because we argued all the time about everything.
Yeah,
So yeah.
I got along with my youngest sibling, so I do understand that because I'm the oldest of. There are 5 of us now. I had a adopted older sister. She unfortunately died last year from a fentanyl overdose. But like, I'm now the oldest. But like, I'm not really close to any of my siblings because of the age cap. So that's why I was wondering. So he did videography, you said, and kind of art and music. Like, what was that like? You're studying for like law school, right? Like, you're trying to like get ready for the bar, and your brother's like, I am going to the play at this club, or I'm going to go shoot this film.
Yeah, I mean, but I did a lot of that stuff too, so it's kind of not as different as you would think, because I was very much involved in like club scenes, because all through college and like my master's program, my law program, I was a promo model at nightclubs and stuff. Did all that to make money on the side. I also just like to go clubbing. I like to go out dancing and hanging out and doing stuff. So our paths like crossed, so it wasn't like super different. And so I'd go out with my brother and his friends every now and then. It's like, yeah. And I just remember our friend Sam, who grew up with us, he and John met when they were in elementary school. He was like, you guys are such weird siblings. He was like, because you're the only siblings I know who act like just like friends, and like had so much crossover in our friend groups, and like, like just hang out. And that's why people thought we were twins sometimes, because they'd be like, what's going on here? But 2 years isn't that far apart, so it makes sense. But yeah, he would just go and like shoot these different concerts or like skateboarding stuff or car shows or whatever he was doing. He would I know he did a lot of photography. It's called the New Daisy, which is like a venue in Memphis. He did a lot of photography and videography for them. My nephew, who was a rapper named Crunchy White Pimp, John shot his music videos. So
hold on, wait on, time out. What was the name? What was his name again? What'd you say?
Brandon's rap name was Crunchy White Pimp.
Okay, right on.
It's after Crunchy Black from Memphis. like from 3-6 Mafia, Crunchy Black Forever. So Memphis people get the reference, but it's
Oh
Crunchy
yeah,
Black.
I'm from St. Louis, so we listen to 3-6 Mafia. Right? Yeah, I just wanted you to say that again. That was an interesting name.
Yup. So John shot all his music videos, and they were really good. They were really good. Actually, I'm so mad he's dead because I make videos now, and he's not here to shoot and edit my videos. I'm so pissed because he shot so many videos for YouTube and different things for different people, and even weddings. Like he even did like some wedding photography and videography, just like whatever for friends. And I'm like, come on, man. Like, now I'm actually doing stuff and making videos online, and I don't have you here to edit my stuff? What kind of raw deal did I get? My cat's fighting. I think my cats are fighting, sorry.
Yeah, no, the for Walt's pleasure, like the Crunchy White Pimp hashtag has become a mainstay of TikTok. You know,
Yes.
I can't remember when that happened, but I remember the video that you made about your nephew, and you know, asking people to like just use it, thinking maybe they'd use it for a day or two or a week or something. I'm sure is what went through your mind, and then Doc just hasn't stopped.
Which is amazing. He asked my permission, and I was like, I love it. And so the whole thing behind Crunchy White Pimp is that sadly Brandon passed away 18 months after John did, and they're actually buried like right by each other. And that was just, you know, he went to sleep. He'd had too much to drink, choked on his vomit, and like didn't wake up. So like just a really sad situation of just like, he was 22. It's just a situation. I mean, how many 22-year-olds go out and drink and whatever, and then, you know, it just insane situation. But yeah, his name was Brandon, and there was this "Let's Go Brandon" stuff with Trump that was trending, and I made a video and said, every time I see "Let's Go Brandon," I think my nephew would think this is hilarious. And I feel like, just to troll the Trumpers, if anybody sees "Let's Go Brandon," just respond with "Crunchy White Pimp Forever." And I didn't think it would be like a thing. And then it ended up being a huge thing. And people were commenting it so much that it became known on the MAGA forums that we were now creating a new slur for Trumpers. And we were calling them Crunchy White Pimp as a slur. Like, they didn't know what it was from or what it referenced. And so, yeah, that was for my nephew, Brandon Baker.
Yeah, that I remember that. That was that was a really cool like thing, because I remember that whole setup, and you know, with the whole "Let's Go Brandon" and everything. So yeah,
They thought it was a slur.
I thought it was a slur.
Didn't they hear the third word in there? Like, what the hell?
I don't know.
Like, we ain't talking about y'all.
I guess to them. Sorry, my cat's just like losing his mind. Quincy, please stop. Thank you. But yeah, it's like, it's so funny that they just perceived it because they saw Crunchy and White, and maybe they saw Pimp as a negative thing. Maybe to them that's a negative thing, but I just had to laugh. I was like, oh, this is an epic troll moment right here that has worked out so well. And I always laugh because I'm like, I know Brandon and John's goofy asses are laughing at this. Knowing the two of them and their personalities.
yeah, I can imagine. Let's shift forward a little bit in time, like not quite to the event, but like what he was doing more video work. Is that really what it became? And yeah, like leading up to like the say a week before it happened, like what was going on with him? What was going on? You know, were you two still talking a lot? Were you were in DC at that point, right?
I had just moved there, so it was September 2017 that I moved there. It was like right after Labor Day, to start my new job and everything. You know, I graduated, all that good stuff, and so I was living there already. So fast forward to November. He just had a birthday. November 14th was his 25th birthday. My parents had come up to visit me and my husband. They left. I had chopped off all my hair because I just wanted to have a shortcut for the first time. And so I chopped my hair off like right below my chin, which I have a ton of hair. Like my hair will grow to my waist if I leave it. So like that was a huge cut for me. And my brother was like, "What'd you cut your hair off for?" Like, oh, and I was like, "You don't like it?" He's like, "Arlena, it looks fine. I just can't believe you cut your hair." And like he had picked up his new BMW, like I said, his new little convertible he picked up from a private sale out in Nashville, and he was sending me a picture of the key because it was bedazzled because it belonged to a teenage girl. So he was like, "I gotta pick these bedazzles off my key," and I was like, "Well, you know."
That's amazing.
And so that's what was going on kind of in that week before, and it's kind of crazy to think about those little things, the haircut and the car and like all of that, and just kind of stuff that came up later related to those things that at the time I would not picture. Something I do want to mention, though, that freaked my entire family out, and still does to this day, is that a month before he died, I dreamt about his murder, every single thing that happened and the way that it happened. And I called my mom and dad upset, in tears. I was like, no, this felt so real. And they're like, "John's fine, he's fine." And I told my brother about it, too, and he was like, "Well, I'm fine, nothing happened." So just to put that on the table ahead of time, after it did happen, I did not sleep well for a really, really, really long time. So, very creepy moment. I'm very much a woman of science, but I also have like a lot of spiritual things that I believe in because, I don't know, it feels like shit happens like in the universe and you can't explain it sometimes. And it just felt like just one of those things. I don't know. Like it was just so weird. And if I hadn't told multiple people in my family about it and then they brought it up to me later after everything had happened, I would think I made it up. But because I was so upset and woke up and called and like told them everything that happened as it was fresh on my mind, it's like even freakier because it's like, oh, they knew about it, you know, so weird.
Well, as much as you want to talk about it, do you know what did happen?
So it was Saturday night. It was, I believe, oh gosh, I kind of forget like the day of the week now, but it all kind of was a blur. And it was December 3rd, but it was like December 3rd, like in the wee hours of the morning. He was leaving this place called The Den in Memphis, which was just like a great little, I guess you call it like a collaborative, like co-op space for artists, spoken word, different things. And he was there recording a musical performance, like the video and photography, just with some friends. And he was walking with two of his friends to their car. And as he was walking, these guys who were next to a parked car, like right on their same side of the sidewalk, pulled guns out, and then this white Hummer drove by, and the white Hummer shooting at the guys by the Infinity, and the Infinity guys shooting back at the Hummer, and instead of hitting each other, a couple of other people who were around got grazed by bullets, and then my brother got struck, like it went straight through his back, through his heart, and he just, that was that. And his friend, one of them got scared and he ended up leaving, and the other one, bless him, I know he's still got a lot of trauma from it today, stayed with him the whole time. And at that very moment that it happened, my mom said, I felt like I needed to call John because something was wrong. And it wasn't even that late. Like, it was kind of just past midnight. Like, it wasn't super late or anything. She called him, and Randy answered, and she said, "Hey, is John there?" And he said, "No, ma'am. He's dead. He just got shot." Randy's in shock. He doesn't know what to think. And so my dad and my mom got in my dad's car and just flew down there, just like where Randy said they were. Called my sisters. My sister Candace was there with my niece, both nieces, Brandon, my nephew Brandon's girlfriend at the time, who was also pregnant. And my sister Katie was with them, my brother-in-law Greg, and they were all just kind of standing around at the crime scene. And in between these moments, we found out later Randy had been put in the back of a cop car and interrogated by police as if he did something, which is just insane. And the police mishandled every bit of this. They can all go to hell. So they mishandled every step of this. If I wasn't ACAB before, I was ACAB after that. And they were terrible. And my dad called me, and I guess I was screaming because he said John got shot. I said, I guess I was screaming because my husband jumped up, like upright, and took the phone, and I got on my knees and just started praying and crying while my husband was on the phone. And he got the phone. He said, John got shot. They don't know, they're seeing what hospital he went to, blah, blah, blah. Now, at this point in time, my mother had not disclosed to anybody that Randy said John was dead because she didn't want to say it. So she just said John got shot. So they're trying to ask police and everything, and the whole scene is sealed off. What happened? And my dad said that his my brother's girlfriend, Courtney, had flown down there, and he found Courtney screaming in the street. And believed at the time, he was like, I knew. He was like, I knew. At that moment. When he scooped her up and put her in the back of his car with my mom. And they're just all down there, like my nieces and everything. And my niece Haley, I remember, was at a sleepover. So she didn't know because she was at a friend's. And my dad told me, well, he was shot, so just say a prayer. But he said he already knew he was dead, but he didn't know what to tell me. Me being who I am, I called every hospital in the city to give his description, his name, and like a John Doe and whatever. And when none of them had him, I knew he was dead in the street. I waited for my dad to call back and said, Daddy, he's dead. He said, he is. And my dad had me like on the car phone. And he said that the police officer who had finally like said, well, show me a picture of your son. I'll tell you if it's him. The police officer went, like he said, came back. He's like, it is your son. And so he had confirmed it. And so my dad's in the car with Courtney and my mom, and they're talking on the car phone. And then my mom said something about, I think he's cold or something, because she's in shock and not processing what's happening. And then my dad, I just heard the car door open, and I heard him get out, and I heard him scream. Like the most blood-curdling scream. And it was just all very shocking. And I was so messed up. So my husband and I walked to, thank God there was an urgent care a block from our apartment. And we walked to it, and I just walked in a daze when they opened, and they were like, what's going on? And I was like, my brother was murdered, and I don't know what to do, but I am losing my mind. So they gave me an injection of Valium, and then they gave me a low-dose Valium prescription. And they were all so nice and hugged me. They're like, we're so sorry. And I gotta tell you, I'm not a person who responds well to medication. I didn't even have an epidural when I gave birth. I don't like anything. Like, I've never used any drugs. I don't drink alcohol. It's not a moral thing. I have a control issue, and I don't like being out of control of my body.
I have to 100% understand that. I am that same person.
It just freaks me out. So the fact that I accepted this Valium injection, now I didn't know what it was going to do there. Like, it might make you sleepy, so go ahead and walk back. Hell no, it made me not feel. Let me tell you, I, at 7:30 in the morning, with that Valium in my system, called every single one of my brother's friends and every family member individually to let them know what happened so they wouldn't find out on social media. One friend made a post. I made him take it down. I said, my middle niece has not even come home from the sleepover. She doesn't even know what happened to her uncle. I said, I handled it, and I got every person notified before that thing so that nobody would find out on social media. And I had talked to the news to get ahead of the story because I know what happens when a young black man gets shot and what happens. It was kind of crazy. And I remember my mom later saying, she was like, how did everyone know? And I was like, oh, I called them. I called everyone. And she was like, that's so crazy. Because I don't know what else to do. I can't save him. And me being a person who's always looking for a little bit of logic or something to hold on to the situation and a task, that's what I did. So that's how that went. The police were terrible. At one point, walked to my dad and said,
I did want to talk about the police, but real quick, so you said you talked with the media, but did you have a lot of information to actually give to the media? Like how did that go? I'm kind of curious about what that was like.
Oh yeah, that was great. So I talked to the media and I was just like, lawyer brain and the value in my system that made me not feel anything for a little bit. The reporter was like, yes, I did have some questions. I was like, great, you do not have permission to record me. And she was like, oh, and I was like, no. Like, I was in my mind to think, like, you're not going to get me slipping up and saying something or choking up or whatever. Like, you're just going to get the facts. I told them everything about him, his family, what he did, his friends, and who he was as a person. Made sure that I picked pictures that I wanted them to use, because the first news article that I didn't get ahead of with their schemy, sleazy asses found a picture digging through his Facebook. A ton of pictures to pick from. Pick the one where it's all dark and he's got on a black hoodie with his hood up.
Yeah, of course they did.
Wow.
And I fought with everybody on Facebook. I fought with every single person. And my mama said this too. She was like, you know, when he died, and usually people say racist, horrible things, like on Facebook stuff. I read through all the comments and nobody said anything. I said, they did, Mama. I fought them until they deleted their comments or their accounts. And she was just like, oh, because like there were just people commenting, probably another thug, and I was in there. Like, I couldn't do anything else, but I could preserve my brother's reputation and make sure that nobody was going to twist this story into something that it was not, and he would get the attention he deserved. I could not do anything else, but I could do that. So that's what I did.
I can only imagine having watched you use your rapier wit to just eviscerate some of the people who leave comments on your videos today. I can only imagine what that must have looked like.
I was mean. I was dragging people. I was talking about, your grandkids are ugly, get off this page. Like, I was just mean. And I don't talk about people's kids like that, actually. Even when I attack people online, I don't do that. But I had some extra spice in me at that time where I said some things that I probably wouldn't even say today. But I was very raw. And I did all this within the first 48 hours, plus organized with my husband to drive back to Memphis. That 14-hour drive. So I took and picked up my brother's friend Trevor from Richmond along the way, because I wanted to make sure he could get to the funeral. And he rode with us, and I got home. Went in his bedroom and lost my shit. Just lost it. Because it hurt and it was bad. But then I was like, he's really gone. He's really gone. And it hit horribly. And he and I have both always been kind of minimalist people, don't really have a lot of stuff. So he didn't even have just like a whole bunch of stuff in his room. But I just remembered going in there and looking at everything. What was the last video game he had that he was playing in his game console? What was he? You know, my mom, I think, still has unwashed laundry of his because it smells like him. And it's been, gosh, like I said, 2017, you do the math. Like, she still has stuff like that. And the next morning I was cussing out the police. So yeah. I get quick to anger and action. That's kind of how I get through a lot of things. I helped do a lot of planning for the funeral, wrote the whatchamacallit, the obituary, all that stuff.
And that's kind of what I want to touch on now, because you said that the police botched every aspect of this. What happened? Where did they fuck up?
In every way. They did not secure the scene. They did not collect video footage. They did not collect shell casings from the bullets. When they walked up to my parents, they said, we've got to check his body for gang tattoos before we move him. He had not one tattoo on his body. My brother hated tattoos. Made fun of me for the tiny tattoo that I have. Told my parents, you can have another baby. It's just a laundry list, like, of just fucked up stuff. Argued with me when I called and said I want his shoes. My mom wanted to bury him in his shoes and his watch that he had on. We're going to bury him in his favorite shirt, which is the shirt I bought him, until we realized that was the shirt he was wearing. It took us a long time to put two and two together on that, digging through all the laundry trying to find it, and then we realized, oh shit, that was the one. Get his shoes and his watch, his wallet, his phone. She said, the cop said, well, we have to hold it per the law. I said, what law? Because I'm a lawyer. Let me hear it. Please give me the statutory citation, because I want to hear it right now. Well, it's policy. Okay, it's policy, so it's not law. So you can give me what I need. Like, I was just, like, they just played in our faces. My mom, in the weeks following, got a metal detector off Amazon and found the bullet casings herself to be sent off to the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. My dad walked around to all the businesses and finally got video footage where you could clearly see the suspects on the footage, and they said we kept waiting for the police to come get it, and they never did. Found out later that the white Hummer that was involved in the shooting, body shop, called the police and said, after my dad got the footage and now it was on the news about the white Hummer involved, called the police and said, we have this Hummer in our body shop for repairs. Do you want it? And the police said, nah. So it ended up getting repaired and sold off. Piece of evidence. Found out later that one of the shooters is his dad, I guess, is connected or whatever, and also the police are just trash. So it's a cold case. We know who was involved, but it's a cold case. My at the time 19-year-old niece, when they said they had no leads, just went on Facebook and found everybody. Found the Hummer, found out the Hummer was involved in a previous shooting in which they should have been charged for, and likely if they had been charged properly and convicted would have kept them from shooting my brother. Found all the information, found out where they live. I found their address. Like, we found everything. The police didn't do they did nothing. And it was some time later when we sat in the DA's office and they assigned this terrible prosecutor named Alonda Dwyer. Alonda, if you're listening to this, go to hell, and I hope you get lose your fucking license, get disbarred, you piece of trash. She was just talking nonsense as I sat quietly with tears streaming down my face taking notes. And then at one point, 30 minutes into her bullshit talk, where she was making no sense, and even said at one point, well, they clearly shot in self-defense at my brother. The gunless victim who was shot in the back as he was running from some people he did not know. The assistant district attorney rushed in and looked at her, and his eyes got big, and he looked around and then looked at me and locked eyes, and he cut across her and said, I heard one of you is a lawyer. And I said, me. And she said, oh, what do you do? I said, I'm a federal lawyer in D.C. And then her face went white. And then they stopped talking so much after that. But I already got what I needed from her to know that she was talking some bullshit. So I remember she threw out mandatory joinder at one point when it made no sense. I don't fucking know. They were just talking. So the police, horrible, did nothing for this investigation. I mean, like I said, my 19-year-old, at the time, 19-year-old niece did way more than those police did. They didn't even secure the scene. You see in the video footage when we got it, the police officers letting the people in the Hummer get in their Hummer and drive off because they just didn't secure the scene at all, as they should have. And I think what happened is they saw young black men and didn't think anybody cared, because then it became very apparent, like, oh, people give a shit. And they couldn't find any dirt on him because, like I said, my brother did not know an enemy and was just squeaky clean kid like me. Didn't even have his first sip of alcohol until he was 21. Like, when I tell you, just like squeaky clean kid. I remember the news saying that they spent 2 hours digging into him, and they called and said, we can't find anything negative and this never happens. They said we could not find nothing that would be negative about him. This does not happen usually with victims. And there's really no such thing as a perfect victim, but as far as whatever they're looking for in this racist system, he's pretty much a perfect victim. And that suddenly made them backtrack and try to clean up, but the damage was done. They didn't do what they needed to do. They just decided some black kid bleeding out on the sidewalk didn't matter, and it was just a hot mess. And then the woman, Sergeant Green, was the head of in charge of the case, who I yelled at on the phone that first day that I was back in Memphis for the week of the funeral. She's now gotten into a ton of trouble. I believe has lost her job because she was found in a bunch of other scandals. Something about driving a witness across state lines and another officer like screwing the witness or something, and then they smoked weed together. I don't know. Oh, wow. Some drama. Just a hot mess. Incompetent all around. And the prosecutor who eventually had my brother's case, it no longer mattered to him because a very famous basketball player who had been murdered in Memphis, they finally had, they knew what happened. It was his ex-wife that had him killed. The prosecutor got assigned that case. And of course, that's a much bigger deal. So, you don't need to worry about John Booker.
I don't want to name shooters because I don't want to give them any notoriety, but did they ever figure out any kind of a motivation for why they did this, or even why they were involved in the earlier shooting?
They were enemies with the people, like the people in the Infinity and the people in the Hummer. They had, I guess, agreed to meet up and shoot at each other or whatever. My brother wasn't a target. They're just terrible fucking shots, and then killed him and didn't even hit the people they were trying to hit. I mean, that's straight up what happened. It's the most ridiculous situation. I almost feel like I'd feel slightly, and I mean very slightly, less raw about it if my brother had been fighting with somebody.
Yeah.
Like, if there were just a fucking reason. Like, and I say that because I did end up losing a cousin in a gun shooting not long after, and that was the situation. He was fighting with somebody. And it almost felt like a little less insane. There's just a sense of security that you lose. Like, you rationalize all day, right? Like, in this world of, like, if I just do this, or if I just don't do that, my chances of being safe or not being caught in something are better. If my brother just goes out and you know, doesn't get involved in a fight, or doesn't do this, doesn't do that, like, he could be a little bit safer. When a super random act of violence against somebody who is not part of an altercation happens, it just completely shatters your, like, sense of maybe the world is okay. You know, like, you know these things happen, and then it happens to you, and then it just hits different. And I don't know if that is making any sense.
It does. It just seems like they treated your brother as disposable, like another black kid that is just another day on the job, and they just it literally. I'm just sitting here, my blood is boiling. I am mad as hell to hear that you guys took the initiative to basically solve the case, and the police, we paid them to do this, didn't do a damn thing, and that upsets me a lot.
Yeah, and I can't even say I'm surprised, because I remember police officers, like, or am I talking about, like, oh, if I hear gunshots, I drive in the other direction and wait for them to stop and then go back. Like, they don't. When people always say that, and they're like, oh, you're criticizing the police. What are you going to do when you need the police? I'm like, we needed them. My brother's still dead. Ha! Joke's on you. Like, what the fuck do you need? They don't show up till after. And then they don't really solve anything. Like, I don't think people understand how few murders are solved in this country. And then even the ones that you solve, like my brother, where we know the people involved, don't get convicted.
Well, go ahead, Brett.
I was going to say, or they show up and they just sit outside for 77 minutes, 376 of them. So, it's, I'm hearing your story, and I'm like, it's almost like our cops and y'all's cops are just trying to, like, one up each other on who can be the biggest shitbags. And then not just that, but DAs as well. So it's really infuriating.
Yeah, that, oh, God love you, Brett, because all day, if you want to talk about blood boiling, that gets me so bad. And yeah, our police officers are the same ones who beat Tyree Nichols to death. So, definitely trying to one up. And that was very sad, by the way, just like a weird, just quick aside. Everything with Tyree Nichols was so sad because he was like, I think like a year older than my brother. He would have been if my brother had still been alive. And one of the pictures I saw of him, because he was a skateboarder in Memphis, that they like shared of him, you could see Booker spray painted in the background, because that's where they spray painted my brother's name in his memory. And then to see like know what happened to Tyree, and then see that, anyway, that was just so messed up. But yes, that right there, like to just sit outside, and I have no idea. I can't. This sucks. This sucks ass, like everything that I deal with. But you, Brett, and my dad, I have no idea. I cannot imagine. Like, when I think about my dad just screaming, and this is a man who's always been very stoic and quiet, I have no idea how you guys do it. Because I have a little boy now, and and then my sister, my brother-in-law, lost their son, like I said, 18 months after John. And I just applaud you guys for getting up and breathing in and out every day.
Oh, it's terrible and it's hard, but I can tell you, and like, I don't know your dad, obviously, but as a father, it's because we have other kids as well. You know, we have to continue on for our other kids, because we don't feel like y'all can lose somebody else. Because I say this all the time, for me, the first 5 seconds in the morning are the hardest, because I wake up and I'm like, this wasn't real, and then it dawns on me and I'm like, fuck, and then I'm pissed off that I woke up, but then I'm awake, so then I have to continue going on. So it's literally just it's for our kids, you know.
That first 5 seconds, my dad has said exactly that. It's wild. And I had a beautiful moment just last month where my dad and I got invited to the BET Awards, and my dad we always dreamed of going together and seeing it, and my dad got to go with me. And it was beautiful and it was amazing. And my brother had this whole line of merch from like his videography and stuff. So we've had so many t-shirts and stickers and decals and stuff made. And I put the symbol on my clutch, and my dad had a little pocket square with the merch on there. So it's like we had John with us. And then at the BET Awards this year, they had all the fathers stand up and they said, "We applaud you because you're raising the next young black men." And I just,
Oh, yeah.
And my dad, I know he said he teared up. And then Usher did his speech, and he called it the Year of the Father, and he talked about his sons. I just like, and I know my dad, I know he was having a little hard time there, because it was a really beautiful, amazing thing that we were doing. But like, you know, like you said, you guys do it for your other kids. I know my sister and brother-in-law have said the same thing as well. Like, you do it for your other kids. But it's still just phenomenal that you're able to do that. And so I look at my dad and I look at my mom, and I just think like, I don't even know. I always I had so many people tell me, and I know they felt for me, and they were like, "I'm so sorry, what can I do for you?" And I say, you know, I said to so many people, "I'll be okay, but I need you to pray for my parents, because this is the worst thing they will ever go through in their entire lives." Like, I knew that off the bat. Like, it is hard losing a sibling. Woo-hoo. But yeah, I know that with a child is a whole other can of worms, and I hate seeing people go through that. I'm sorry that you had to go through that. And it's even worse when it's at the incompetence of people like the police and just crazy people with guns, when we could just easily like prevent so much gun violence in this country. And it's mind-boggling.
So yeah, so that leads to a couple of questions before we do the reset. So first, you mentioned it's a cold case, right? And you had talked about how like, oh, they take forever to find the person, but in this case, they didn't even charge anybody, right? Like, it was just,
yeah, they tried to charge with reckless homicide, which is like nothing. It's nothing in the state of Tennessee, and we said that's not good enough. And it didn't make any sense that they wouldn't at least charge for attempted murder, because there are living victims. My brother's friend was shot at. There were people who were hit with bullets who didn't die. I don't understand to this day. And I have like attorneys ask me, they're like, "They're not doing this, they're not doing that." I'm like, who you telling? Because I can't figure it out. But I do, based on just some interactions we've had, think that the guy who drove the Hummer, it seems that his dad is very well connected. And I think that played a lot into it. And now it's at the point where there's a new DA in office who happens to be my former law professor and one of my law mentors. But the case is so cold now that even any good prosecutor who wants to help, what can they do? You know, so, yeah, so I don't know what may come of it. I don't know if anything can come of it. We still hold out hope, obviously. Also, at a certain point, like, you want justice, and at the same time, it's like, it's not going to bring them back. So it's like also waffling between that, like, you know, just it's a lot of feelings, a lot of emotions, and it's all very complicated. And so from day to day, I will shift from at peace and forgiveness to, I got their address, I could just blow their brains out myself, like, just straight up. Like,
probably don't do that. That's probably not the way to go.
I'm not going to do that because, as Brett said, I do have a child that I have to live for and take care of. if I had been childless. I don't know. You probably have heard about me on social media in a very different capacity, but instead I'm just a sweet activist mom who's trying to do the right thing. And also, I say that, but I couldn't do that because I can't bear the idea of hurting someone the way my brother was hurt, even if it's somebody so terrible. It's just like beyond me. So instead, I just hope they choke on their barbecue back in Memphis.
Yeah, that's fair. The other thing that I would like to ask, and we can carry this forward depending on what you want to say. How did this inform your activism? Like, how actively involved were you before your brother died, and how did it change the type of activism you did, or did it just deepen that commitment? Like, what happened with that?
Well, first, it completely broke me as a human being. And so I specialized in community violence prevention. That's what I focused on all through law school and my grad program when I got my JD and PH. And my whole goal was to work in focusing on community ACEs, which are adverse childhood experiences, and specifically the reduction of community violence. And I gotta tell you, I couldn't really do that anymore. I was too traumatized. I had a bunch of PTSD and having panic attacks, even at the job I had that dealt with, at the time I was working at an agency where we were dealing with issues with unaccompanied refugee minors, and even that was just so intense I would have panic attacks and cry. So I went into privacy law, went into this world that separates you from the humans and in a different way. And then at one point I went into tobacco research because that seemed like, I could solve that, and made like those commercials to try to keep youth from using vapes and stuff like that. That kind of research, and that was like, yay, not you vaping, right? So there was.
I'm old school. I don't vape. So.
Oh, okay. I got you.
He's using.
But it was just.
But it is bad, kids. Don't fucking do it.
So I just felt like, that's something I could do. That I don't know. Just trying to look for something that has a solution. And so then I got on social media because of the pandemic. Because, how many people do you know who were trained at the CDC in public health law and epidemics, quarantine, isolation laws?
0.
You. That's pretty much it.
It's me.
Yeah,
I'm one of the few.
Nobody.
I'm one of the few. Public health lawyer here, and I didn't think it was going to go anywhere. So I was like, let me do something else. And then whole pandemic hit while I was on maternity leave with my newborn. And so I started getting messages from people who were like, we have one student who graduated in Memphis who studied this, like, let's reach out to her. And my phone was blowing up, and I gave a lot of guidance and info and blah blah blah. And so I started posting online, right? And so talking about that, and it's grown since then, from explaining vaccine approval and all that. It's grown into so much more. I talk about so many things still within politics and still within all of my core values, but it's only been in the last 6 months that I have finally feel like that I'm in a place where I can comfortably get back into community violence prevention and that sort of advocacy. So I am now talking to some different organizations to see how I can lend my voice, potentially going to the White House to try to talk to the Office of Gun Violence Prevention, trying to hopefully reach out to this new Democratic presidential nominee, the likely presidential nominee, Vice President Kamala Harris, and talk about progressive ideas I have when it comes to addressing gun violence. And so I finally feel like, okay, I can do this, and I'm not just completely going to break down every time I try to think or talk about it. But it's taken a lot. We all saw what the pandemic did to us, and then everything else, and other losses along the way. I announced I was pregnant, and the next day my nephew died. It's just been a lot of craziness and back and forth and highs and lows. And so,
I get that. All right, let's reset as it's now 10 o'clock. For everyone listening, you are listening to Stories from the Cold Dead Hands, a radio show where we focus on the uplifting the voices of those who gun violence took away from us, telling the stories of victims, their families, and the survivors of those events. I'm Dr. Benjamin Dowd Arrow. I am a gun researcher at Florida State University. My co-host is Brett Cross.
I'm a pissed off dad who lost his son at a school shooting. So I'll never forget it, and I'm not going to let anybody else.
We have a special guest co-host tonight, Walt.
Yeah, I am a content creator and an artist who also is traumatized by loss of family and friends due to gun violence as well. So this hits close to my heart as well.
And then our special guest tonight, we are talking with Elizabeth Booker Houston. Liz.
Yeah, I'm a lawyer, comedian, social scientist who does a lot of fun political commentary that I describe as the Daily Show with more F words. And also, unfortunately, the sister of a wonderful little brother who was murdered due to gun violence on December 3rd, 2017.
Yeah. So, now, we shift gears, this segment kind of like not end on a down note, but we can start with the social media stuff, because you mentioned that you and I started at about the same time, and we've been friends now 3 years or something on that app. It's been forever. But we both kind of started for the same reason, right? We're locked in. I was a public health professor. You're a public health lawyer. That's how we started. But then you kind of slowly moved into Devil's Opposing Counsel. And this whole idea of kind of talking about the things that happened to you. So you want to talk a little bit about that and kind of how that evolved?
Yeah, it's funny because there's not really it's just one of those things where it feels like stuff keeps happening and I got something to say, and so I'll just say the thing. And like you said, with the public health lawyer background, the first thing was the pandemic, because I was trained at the CDC's public health law program in epidemics, pandemics, isolation, quarantine law. When the CDC steps in, public health law generally, I worked at the FDA and have since 2017. So all about the vaccine approval process and, trying to educate people there on the platform when it comes to that. And also, just losing my brother made me not give a fuck about so many things. So I just decided I didn't want to deal with respectability politics anymore, or political correctness. And it's been a journey with that, because it's definitely evolved over time. It's only been 2 years that I stopped masking my accent online. So you'll probably remember, Ben, I used to cover up my accent because I didn't want people to be like, oh, she's country and ignorant and blah, 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 because of the, Brett, can you relate, with being from Texas?
Absolutely. I did luck out and don't have a strong Southern accent. And I don't know how. I think it's because I grew up on Midwest and West Coast rap. I think that's the only reason why I don't. But other than that, no, absolutely. No, and that's what I was going to say too, is your political commentary, you just said, you just quit giving a fuck. And that's kind of what happened to me after this. In the beginning, I tried to, I wore my work clothes and I, wore my hat forward, people didn't know I had long hair, my tattoos were covered and everything, until one day I was like, nobody's fucking listening, so I'm just going to be myself. I'm going to be myself. I'm going to show who I am and make y'all fucking listen. Is that kind of the same? You're just fuck it all. I'm going to be me.
Yeah, it just got exhausting. It's so many rules, and it's being a black woman, and then a black Southern woman, and then a black Southern woman who was a lawyer, and it's you mask your accent, and you're supposed to talk this way, and the respectability politics of it all. And I was just tired, and I think so many of us are. And I'm looking at this man, this orange buffoon, and I'm like, he's a whole president, and he's stupid, and he doesn't say anything right, and he's politically incorrect, and why can't I do that but be smart? And so it actually worked out. And so I just started dragging people and cussing and saying whatever I wanted. And then I also noticed that it wasn't just that it was funny, but it helped people actually learn the information. Because, spoiler alert, when the law and politics aren't presented in the driest, most boring way ever, people learn, and then they care. And then that felt so good. And my favorite comment that I get on a regular basis is, I didn't care or know about law and politics until I found you, and I'm so glad I did. And it also scares me a bit to have so many people say, I come to you first for the news and information. Like, wow, that's frightening. So I take it very seriously, and that's also why I'm not a breaking news. I like, for the first time in a very long time, I posted yesterday within a few minutes of Biden stepping down, because it was a very easy 15-second thing to just say he's stepping down. But I'm not a breaking news content creator. I'm not the first to talk about something. You probably shouldn't come to me if that's what you're looking for, because I ruminate on it. I read every Supreme Court case I talk about. I read every case I talk about. I read it in detail. I'm going to read the legislative history. I'm going to read the statutes. I'm going to read the regs. And then you'll come hear about it. Like, it's like tomorrow I'm posting my video about the Trump immunity case. That opinion's been out for weeks. Whatever. I don't care. I need it to be the correct, accurate information, and hopefully just be, entertaining for people, because it is dry and boring, and it's not fun to learn this stuff.
But I think you do a good job of, maybe that's what inspired you to go do comedy, right? But like, I think you do a good job of interjecting like humor, or it's your sarcasm that I love about you the most, right? Like, it's that snarky, like, underhanded kind of sarcasm that you inject in sometimes when you're talking about these opinions, or the different things happening, and just the dry, almost like British style delivery system that you have, where you're just like looking deadpan at the camera and just like letting it come out. That is just amazing to watch when you're talking about this. And I think maybe that's what makes people resonate with your content, and because they're learning something, but you're also making them giggle.
I sure hope so. I hope they're learning something and giggling and having a good time. But yeah, the deadpan thing is so funny.
You don't have to hope. That's what drew me to you. That's why I started following you. I'm like, man, she is ripping they ass to shreds on this mother. Let me calm down. Yeah, you killed me.
We're after 10, so you can say whatever.
Yeah. Well, in these clapbacks, so I actually have some of them pulled up. One of your videos on your recent comments. So I know that I get fucking terrible comments and shit. So I'm always, interested to see if anybody else does. And everybody who's lost somebody to gun violence gets, the horrible shit. But I'm reading this, and this one is so fucking funny to me. It said, whoever this jackass is, Verified Mark, says, don't your people do the same thing but just blow themselves up? And you reply, my people, as in lawyers? Explain. That shit made me fucking die laughing. I'm just like, dear God, because I do the same shit too. One dude one time came at me and he was like, girlfriend wants her earrings back. And I said,